Welcome to the final day of Sagar Manthan, the Great Ocean Dialogue. My name is Urvashi Sudhindra, and I'll be moderating this very interesting discussion on integrated ocean governance, turning competition into collaboration. I'm joined today with two very lovely, insightful, brilliant gentlemen here. We have Karim Dahu, who's the Deputy Director and Head of China Unit, Global Relations and Cooperations Directorate at the OECD. And we've got Peter Onkamp, who's the Senior Advisor for Good Carbon, but also comes from a background of blue finance and strategic advising for ocean innovation startups. So welcome, both of you. And I'm looking forward to this discussion with both of you, Karim and Peter.
Thank you.
So the ocean economy is expanding fast, and so are the fault lines, right? Fisheries, shipping, offshore wind, tourism, and seabed mining, like we were discussing previously, all are competing for the same finite resources and fragile ecosystem of the ocean. The challenge before us is no longer about how we grow faster, but how we grow together, right? Integrated ocean governance is about turning competition into collaboration. And that's what we are going to be talking about, bringing science, policy, industry to the same table. That's what events like this are doing successfully. It's about recognizing that the ocean is not a collection of sectors, but a connected ecosystem, one where decisions in one domain ripple into the others, right? So today's conversation is entirely focused on that. We will build coherence across different sectors. We will talk about sustainable financing. We will talk about blue growth. We will talk about opportunities and innovation. I would like to open up with the first question for both of you, and I'd love to hear both your inputs for this question. So, integrated ocean governance asks us to move beyond those sectoral silos. In practical terms, what does this effective coordination between fisheries, shipping, energy, tourism, conservation look like? What is it that we can do together, and what does your work tell us in terms of those examples? So, Karim, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you very much. I find it a fantastic, fascinating subject, both because we do a lot of work on the ocean economy and ocean sustainability at the OECD, but also because I happen to be a seaman. I grew up on the shores of the Mediterranean, and I'm even a fisherman. So for me, it's very important and to some extent sentimental. So let me put it in simple terms. The ocean economy has grown tremendously over the past 2 decades, from about 1.3, 1.4 to 2.78, almost 3 trillion. So if it was to be measured against major economies, it would be the 5th largest in terms of GDP. At the same time, it raises a lot of sustainability challenges, and all the work that we do on ocean productivity, the ocean economy, shows that if you aim to sacrifice the sustainability dimension because you want to record quick progress on the economic front, well, you will have declining yields, declining returns, and it won't do the job. So let me just take one example about the complementarity between the economics and the sustainability, which draws from the beginning of my career. I started my professional, I was first chief of staff of the executive secretary of a large NGO, and then I put together a unit of research, a think tank in Dakar, in Senegal, and we were working on trade and natural resource management. And at this time, I worked a lot on fisheries because along the West African coast, it's the main staple, but it's also the main source of export revenues. I mean, you find there, for instance, Senegal countries for whom fisheries represent 1/3 of exports, but at the same time, because it's connected to the global market, and there's a huge pressure on certain species that are commercially valuable, you run the risk that you deplete the stocks, and at the end of the day, the export revenues collapse. So we work together with the Environment Ministry, the Trade Ministry, and other ministries towards making sure that there was a monitoring of fish stocks. There was a fight against illegal fishing, and we ensured also that fishing regulations regarding net size, etc., were implemented, so that on the one hand, you can maintain the resource, and it plays in the hands of the trade policy at the same time. So, I mean, this is just one example, but I could give plenty that show that if you don't manage hand in hand, on the one hand, the economics, and on the other hand, the sustainability dimension, and you don't try to implement policy coherence, then it won't do the job.
Thank you, Karim. And that's a very good example in terms of everyone coming together to make the fish stock a valuable produce for the country, right? Thank you. Peter, over to you. What does effective integrated ocean governance look like in your space of work?
Well, thank you, Urvashi. To take my private sector perspective to this, right, it's a bit more general, but I think meaningful collaboration is what happens when we move from policy discussion to actual investments. So on paper, collaboration is a meeting, we are talking with each other, but in practice, it's if we have a shared business case. Right? So, and Karim was alluding to that, there are different pillars to this, and I particularly see the three pillars of government, science, and private sector industry. So the government has to provide the guardrails, set clear, stable, long-term goals and policies, and de-risk basically through these long-term security the market for the private sector to play in. And science has to play the role of keeping the scoreboard, only providing objective data, baselines, and metrics, only what we can measure, we can actually see whether we have impact. Does it work? What does good actually look like? So I think that's the role of science. And then for the private sector, it's basically to provide the engine once these guardrails and the scoreboard are in place. And the private sector will then automatically come in and provide capital investment and scalability, right? And so in practice, that means we just need to align the incentives for all these different actors. And that's basically also where I play my role when I work with these different projects, whom I help to kind of scale their businesses and find their niche, right? It works when we have targets and then have scientifically verified projects that align with government policies. Ultimately, I think what is most important to bring these ocean economy and the ocean health together is we need to stop looking at the ocean as a place where we extract resources from. I think we need to get to a point where we see the ocean as a $1 trillion carbon asset. And if you have an asset, you need to invest in it, and you need to maintain it, and you need to service it. And I think when we get there, the private sector investment will not only become, logical, but also very profitable, and it will be kind of a very profitable business opportunity.
Thank you, Peter. And I think, I've been part of many discussions where we've spoken of nature as an asset class, the ocean as an asset class. And we'll come to the whole de-risking conversation when I do a more targeted question for you. But it is very important for us to start looking at investing in the ocean, not to extract resources, as you said, but as a solution for the climate crisis, because the ocean is our largest carbon sink, right? Which brings me to a very specific question for you, Karim. And the OECD has long championed the policy coherence for sustainable development. What global or national models, based on the expanse that OECD works at, are leading examples of integrated ocean governance? What countries are doing a better job than the others? What are some of those case studies that we can look into and learn from and implement in India or in the global south or with small island developing states? What is it that we can learn?
Thank you very much. Again, an important question. I mean, first and foremost, one size does not fit all, and I don't think there's any country that has managed ocean governance in an optimally integrated manner. But still, there are a lot of countries that are making significant efforts, and let me perhaps flesh out some of these efforts. So first and foremost, I think it is important to base the efforts on science. I mean, at the OECD, we say that we are evidence-based, and we believe that the best policies are those that draw on evidence. So science is of essence, and to have integrated marine governance, I would say that first and foremost, space-based policies are of essence. There are at the moment almost 70 countries, if I recollect correctly, that have started to elaborate and also to implement marine spatial planning policies. It's very important because there are conflicts of usage between, for instance, offshore energy and fisheries, between fisheries and shipping, between tourism and aquaculture. And coastal areas are very exposed in particular because they are subject to many kinds of pressure from urbanization, which conflicts with not only the environmental management of the sea, which is very important for fisheries, for tourism, but also with coastal agriculture. And coastal agriculture concentrates most of the agriculture of a lot of countries from the Indian Ocean, for instance. If you look at ASEAN, at islands of the Pacific, but even in India, you have a lot of key agricultural activities that take place in coastal areas, which on top of these are subject to climate change, erratic rainfall, rising sea levels. Rising sea levels have an impact also on soil salinization and therefore hamper agriculture. So you need to articulate all these usages and understand the trade-offs and try to regulate the respective usages of the sea and of coastal areas. And marine spatial planning is of essence for that. So, I mean, it's a work in progress. I think we are not there yet. As I said, there's not any country that, has perhaps fully succeeded in this, but there are a lot of countries that are making the effort. And let me just conclude by stressing also the importance of coordinating between several levels of governance, because on the one hand, there's the national level, which is important for the high sea, which is important for exclusive economic zones. But at the same time, I was stressing that coastal areas are subject to particular fragility, and you better manage such fragilities at the local rather than at the central level. So you need to involve local authorities in this business. So coordination among levels of governance, central on the one hand, but local on the other hand, is of essence.
Thank you for mentioning that, Karim. I think it's essential while we're having these ocean conversations that governments do look at creating a minister of ocean or a particular body that could coordinate between the different ministries, the local, the national, the international as well. And I personally propagate for an ocean ministry within India as well. Which brings me to a very interesting question for you in your current role with the OECD. An unpopular opinion, because a lot of, anti-China conversation has been happening. How can India and China look beyond the geopolitical tensions, look beyond the competition, and collaborate for the ocean? Because we've got just one ocean, right?
Thank you very much. It's not a simple question, but let me stress one way of perhaps looking into complementarities. I think India is exposed with the need to upgrade activities in global value chains. At the moment, 45% of the workforce is concentrated in the agricultural sector, but the agricultural sector represents only 15% of GDP. And there's a real need for India to further industrialize. This is also critical. I heard Sanjeev Sanyal this morning, who rightly said that there's a window of 25 years during which India can tap on its demographic dividend. It's true. This is the time when India can really make a breakthrough and shift towards a high middle income or even a high income country. But for this to happen, there needs to be further growth in the agricultural in the industrial sector. And for this, there needs to be a certain number of conditions. I think that further opening to international investment that can provide know-how, innovation is of essence, and investment in education is also of essence. Those countries that succeed in making this upgrade in global value chains like Vietnam meet these characteristics. It's perhaps more challenging for countries that have been a bit stuck in the middle income trap, and we see the Z generation sanctioning them, as we saw in, I'm not going to quote names, but we saw in South Asia some demonstrations by the youth to ask for more work. And I think that here China has perhaps the potential to disseminate some of its know-how and the breakthroughs it has achieved in innovation in India. I think India is already taking steps towards relaxing some investment restrictions. I think this relates to the fact that, for instance, as much as India now produces all of the mobile phones that are used by its consumers, the sophisticated ecosystem which helps to catch a significant share of the value is not there yet. And further cooperation with China, but also with OECD countries, can help towards that end. And this is the same for the ocean and the marine governance. China is quickly upgrading activities in value chains. And this is certainly an area where the potential for cooperation and sharing of know-how and experience between India and China, but also other countries that are relatively advanced in the value chain, can be beneficial.
Thank you, Karim. In a world which is increasingly looking inwards and looking at self-sufficiency as nations, I think multilateralism and bilateralism, learning from each other, not reinventing the same technologies just to claim it as our own, will go a long way. The planet is burning, and we should be able to learn from anyone and everyone who's doing better, right?
If I may, one particular area where cooperation with China can deliver is certainly the energy transition. I mean, solar, wind are becoming more and more cost-effective and have the potential to diminish India's dependencies on imports of energy. And this is an area where, including for offshore wind, as we are discussing the ocean economy, an area where China has made significant progress, including, by the way, for energy storage and grid-scale batteries. So that's also an area where cooperation can be beneficial.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Peter, coming to you. You're at the intersection of finance, innovation, ocean sustainability. What does the government industry and what does the public-private sector partnership look like in terms of better collaboration? What tools do we require? What digitization do we require to enable better collaboration in the ocean space?
Very good question. I think one area personally where I feel a lot of innovation could help to drive the agenda forward would be in the space of measurement. So anything, any digital tools, inexpensive sensors that make the current state measurable, make impact measurable, because once you can measure it, you can manage it, and then you can also finance it. And as long as we don't know that, or when the measurement and kind of data evaluation becomes too expensive, then we don't do it, right? And I think obviously satellites and sensors paired with data analytics can be like the ears and eyes of us, because what happens in the ocean, what happens on land, we see and feel very immediate because someone has a cell phone camera at it and sees if something is wrong, right? Out there in the ocean, I don't know, the fish don't have phones to kind of report on what's happening. So I think that is an area where I think a lot of innovation can help to bring down the cost curve. And if it's more measurable, it becomes more visible.
Yes, Karim.
If I may add one point on this topic, we have put together, I couldn't agree more that measuring is of essence, an OECD Ocean Economy Monitor, and it covers 33 ocean-related activities across 142 countries. And we have time series of more than 2 decades, dating back 1995, roughly. Yes, we cannot, as I said, economics and sustainability go hand in hand, and we cannot measure, make significant progress if we don't measure effectively the impact that one kind of policy can have on other policy areas, other aspects of the integrated management of the ocean economy. So yes, measuring is really key.
Absolutely. And you know what, one of the things I would like to leave our audience with is there is a lot of citizen engagement when it comes to ocean data measurement, right? Like every dive you take, every boat you take out to the water, every ocean related activity that you do, you can collect data and share that back. And that's not your responsibility to collate or go through as a citizen, but you can share that back with the right kind of authorities to go through. Which brings me to another question, Peter. India is a young country, and we've been hearing what Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal said. Karim just, told us the same thing. There is a 25, 30-year window for us as Indians to do things differently, to do things better. What would be your financial advice to the youth of India who would want to build something in the ocean innovation space, or who would want to be ocean entrepreneurs? How can they take things forward? What can they do to do this, to create this impact?
It's a very interesting question indeed. I think, the young generation in India is probably very blessed. And we've heard Sanjeev, and the government has laid out the playing field so that it's very innovation friendly environment. So, I think that's the first thing. So, and if you now have brilliant young engineers who have ideas on developing new tools for measuring, and I think there's also different avenues. It's not a bankable, investable proposition immediately, right? I think at that stage, when someone has an idea and wants to develop it and see whether it might become a commercially viable venture, I think there are a lot of foundations that give money in that space, grants, where you can then have a year or two where you can then further develop your plan and your project. And once you have a small kind of market viable product, then you can go out and I think then there's where the venture capital industry comes in, or family offices who also a lot of the ultra high net worth individuals, they do deeply care about the oceans, because we all know without a viable ocean ecosystem, there wouldn't be any life possible on this planet.
Yes, Karim.
Yeah. No, I cannot help, but I really would like to bounce on this one, because again, as I started this conversation, I stressed that I was a seaman, and so what can you do to further cultivate the taste of the ocean economy within the broad public? I think first and foremost, you need to make efforts towards trying to prompt to build the love of the sea among the wide public. So I think it's about telling stories. I mean, why are the Greeks and the Europeans so fascinated about the sea? And it's clear that the Odysseus and the story of Ulysses matters. The Arabs have the Sinbad. You need to tell tales. And Sanjeev, I admire him for this. I heard him talking about his sailing trip towards Indonesia through the Bay of Bengal, and he wrote a book as well on the Indian Ocean, and I think that's of essence. You need to tell these kind of stories to cultivate the love of the sea among the people, and then you need to really mainstream it in education, in school. You need to have curricula which stress the importance of managing with care and responsibility fragile ecosystems. You need to really disseminate mainstream knowledge, awareness about the sea among the people. That's the first but most important and radical step to take.
And I think that's a shortage world over, right? We've got a lack of storytellers for the ocean, and that's increasing now. So really happy to know that. So I think my conclusion from this very nice discussion that we've had, very insightful discussion, is education, literacy is probably the starting point, and all the way to there is enough opportunity in terms of innovation, measurement, data collection, collaboration with our neighbors, with the larger community, and to bring in more people who are not directly associated with the ocean into that blue fold, to have that conversation with terrestrial organizations, with landlocked nations, with building up everyone and telling the tale of the ocean as wide as we can. Right. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you so much, Kareem, for this discussion. And thank you so much for our audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.